Um, I've been, I would say, alone for a lot of my life. Um, I've been very isolated socially, culturally, throughout most of my existence. At the moment, I don't have any friends that I talk to or do anything with, and I'm not really trying to make friends at all. I do talk to people and I socialize with them in some regard, but I don't really ever speak to them regularly or it's more of a situation of acquaintances rather than it is a friend. Um, but the point is, I'm a very lonely person. But um, when you are so isolated throughout most of your life, there's a point at which you start to develop a lot of ideas around other people and how they relate to you and what that means, you know, especially being very socially isolated, ostracized in a sense, I would say. Um, you kind of you develop these fringer ideas on socialization, its existence even. I think at this point in time, at least, I function a lot better when I am alone, just because it's something I'm very used to. Uh, I don't really, I don't really work well in crowds or even one-on-one situations. I'm very nervous when it comes to that. I guess that would be the behavior that you would attribute to that, nervous behaviors. I don't really speak well. Even this is kind of a stretch. Um, I don't really, I can't make eye contact. I'm always like looking down, fidgeting. You know, I stutter a lot. Even here, I'm stuttering. I try to speak somewhat professionally because I want to get my points across to someone who will understand it. But there's there's a lot of trouble when it comes to that, especially when I'm not reading off a script or any sort of points. This is completely unscripted, and I don't have a set, of points I'd like to talk about and share my ideas on. This is just completely out of the blue. But I figured to myself I would ramble about isolation or love or something like that. Um, and I'm not going to make the point that I think love is completely dead. I think it's very hard to come by, yes, and that the current cultural norms, especially in the United States, have almost rejected what would be, I guess, a traditional relationship, um, even between a man and woman, a traditional, like what the roles would be there and how a wife and a husband love each other, um, to more just pleasurable acts. Um, I have a lot of distaste and discomfort towards hookup culture and the blatant um, looksism, I guess I would say, kind of hierarchy of attraction that goes on. You know, I'm sure these are talking points you've heard from young men like myself time and time again. If you're a part of this kind of cultural sphere online, especially, but I don't think it would be talked about so much if it wasn't true to some extent. Um, you know, and I do think in the current culture, love is somewhat, like rotting. It's like a rotting corpse, infested with maggots and everything like that. I can't see anything that isn't completely corrupted entirely by like just want and lust. And I'll admit I've been a victim well, not a victim, but a perpetrator of that myself. I suppose a victim as well, considering I was one half of a relationship. But, you know, something I would just like to talk about, and I'll probably make a professional video on this with some better scripting and audio equipment. Um, but I do think that the current fringes of culture and what is being accepted normally or normalized or even what's being proposed is simply because of lust and sexuality and sexual contact. I really think that there is no worse plague upon civilization than what it wants to accept sexually. Um, and that is something that I would like to talk about at length. The concept of culture being an STD of sorts, what's accepted and what's right and what's wrong being portrayed through sexuality and how that affects every aspect of social living and culture within life itself. Um, it's I don't think that's a particularly hard concept to understand, nor is it something that is a very nuanced criticism of the world. I think it's as simple as pointing out the sky is blue, but at the same time, I do want to talk about it at length because I think it is something important to be said, but I'd have to do it at some other time where I can actually record and talk about it specifically because um, this video is more of just like a throwaway, um, just blabbering about nothing. But I still, I have plans laid out for that, and I've been hacking away at a script for it for a little bit. But I, and maybe I'll make a video centered around isolation and how that's kind of, especially male isolation, young male isolation has really shaped a lot of discussion and how that kind of affects every aspect of life. Um, I think social isolation is the worst form of torture, even though I've developed some sort of Stockholm syndrome-ish want to be alone, and I can't really work well with others at all, despite the fact that I want to, in a sense, It's a situation reminiscent of like learned helplessness and conditioning, um, to the point that you don't believe you can work well with others at all, and you begin to resent others for even having friends or especially having partners. There's a very heavy resent I've noticed throughout other people and even myself, where people will see others with partners and just kind of hate that person, hate both of those people because they have something that you want and you don't think it's fair. You know, I mean, you have all this talk of acceptance for who you are and everyone being important and special in their own way, but it seems that especially people like me who genetically or socially just aren't engineered correctly to be um, popular or successful people in any sense, just seem to get completely sidelined when it comes to greater acceptance or even tolerance. You feel as though you are dejected and almost the scum of the earth simply for existing. And you may not be even hurting anyone in any sense. Um, your existence might be completely looked over. People will see that you're there, that you are a person, but that's as far as the observation goes. They don't notice anything else about you other than that is, a person there. that guy being that guy, that kid, the quiet one. um, but and I'm considering writing something about that, but I figure um, a lot of those ideas will come into play, especially when I'm writing about other concepts and how those relate to me, um, and speaking about them as well. Really, this channel is just a way to get my ideas across in a world that doesn't seem to want to hear them. And I don't really think my ideas are that radical or world changing to a sense that they should be rejected. Um, I think that really they should be um, not normalized, but people should at least give them some merit. I just don't really have a way to communicate these effectively because I'm very bad at speaking publicly and even privately to myself. Um, I would say I write much better than I do speak, but I figure that if I speak about it, that humanizes the perspective much more, um, to then where people will want to actually hear what is being said because it isn't words on paper that is being written, but a person speaking to you with a voice and a life and wants and interests. You know, um, I have plans. I have big plans to make shitty slop videos about pseudo intellectual concepts. Um, Mostly wallowing in my own misery about how my life is lonely and how I blame the molestation of everything in my life on modern culture and how it completely and utterly ruins the childhood and joy of someone who has been subjected to it. That's kind of the thesis of a lot of what I want to make is the effects of culture and how, you know, it kind of pervades everything in life to a point that life itself is unenjoyable. But I suppose that's enough of that trite. y- I'm sure the person listening to this probably doesn't want to um, shovel through what is essentially just unorganized thoughts. But I will have some organized speech eventually. Hopefully, it will be less stuttery and unprofessional because I would like to come across as some sort of authority to listen to, or at least be someone pleasant to listen to. I'm sure the ranting doesn't help. So I should probably wrap this up. I apologize for the bad audio quality. I'm doing this while I drive because that is most often when these thoughts come to me because I am alone with myself, and so I'm also alone physically, not just not distracted. So there might be more of this, probably unstructured content, in between what would be more, uh, generally more professional videos. Um, so I, I should probably wrap this up.